In this video, I will discuss the cybersecurity framework which was prepared by National Institute of Science and Technology. And this is the version 1.1 of this framework, which was published in 2018 by NIST in collaboration with the academia and industry. So this is a very comprehensive framework, and this is to ensure the cyber security practices by the people who are managing the critical infrastructure of our country. And NIST has developed this framework under the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2014. And it is a guidance for all the operators of critical infrastructure to ensure the security of their respective critical infrastructure. So there are 5 core functions of this framework, that is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Then in each of these core functions, there are certain categories of activities. For example, in identify, there are 6 categories, and like asset management, business environment, governance, risk management assessment, and risk management strategy, and supply chain risk management. Then in each of these categories, there are subcategories. For example, in asset management, there are 6 subcategories of security activities, and in business environment, there are 5, governance 4, and so on. Similarly, in the core function of protect, there are certain main categories like identity and access management, awareness and training, data security, information protection, processes and procedures to maintain the security and the protection technologies. And in detection core function, there are certain categories of anomalies and events detection, and security continuous monitoring and detection processes. And then in respond, this category is response planning, communication, analysis, mitigation, and improvement of your incident response. And in recover, the recovery planning, then improvement of recovery plans, and then communication with all stakeholders to ensure appropriate recovery of your information services. So I have highlighted different numbers of sub activities or subcategories within each of these main categories. For example, in asset management, you have to perform certain sub activities like you have to inventory all your physical devices and assets, and then you have to inventory your all application and software platforms which are in your organization, and then you have to see the communication and data flows and any external information systems. You have to catalog those systems as well. Then you have to prioritize your enterprise resources as per the criticality of different security requirements or the assets. And then you have to define the roles and responsibilities to ensure the cybersecurity for all the assets in your organization. Then in business environment, there are 5 sub activities or subcategories. For example, you have to first of all define the role of your organization in overall supply chain, and you have to define different roles of vendors and yourself as well. Then you have to determine and communicate your placement in the protection of critical infrastructure and your place in the industry, and you have to communicate this to all stakeholders. And then you have to perform the prioritization of security efforts as per the strategic direction of your organization, as per the mission of your organization, or the overall goals. Then you have to see the dependencies and critical functions of your business, and then you have to define the resilience requirement to for continuity of the IT or security operations or your business. So this may include the disaster recovery planning or business continuity planning, maybe, or incident response. Then in governance, the subcategories or sub-activities, you have to define the cybersecurity policy, and then you have to align the roles and responsibilities with all the security efforts. And then you have to see the legal or regulatory requirements, and then you have to uh, in while doing the governance and risk management activities, you have to see the cybersecurity risk, and you have to address these cybersecurity risks. And then in risk assessment, you have to identify the vulnerabilities against your assets, and then you have to see the internal or external cyber threat intelligence, how they are affecting your systems, and then you have to see the other threats and how they are going to target the vulnerabilities or the your assets. And then you have to see the likelihood and the overall impact on your business or your IT services. And then you have to overall see the risk by mapping the assets, their vulnerabilities, their threats, and the likelihood of uh, this activity. And then you have to prioritize your responses to risks. And then in risk management strategy, there are three sub functions, that is, risk management processes should be agreed by all stakeholders and should be clearly defined and communicated. Then you have to define the risk tolerance level of your organization, and you have to clearly communicate that. And then you have to see that your risk management strategy is also informed by your the role of your organization in protection of critical infrastructure of the nation. Then in supply chain risk management, there are five sub activities or subcategories. That is, supply chain risk management processes should be agreed by all stakeholders and should be clearly defined. Then you have to assess the security of your suppliers, since your services depend upon these suppliers. Then you have to embed the cybersecurity controls in the contracts which you are doing with your suppliers. And then you have to audit, or you have to see different reports from your suppliers, or maybe the key performance or key risk indicators, in order to assure that all the controls are working as intended. Then you have to develop your incident response or recovery plan, and test these plans in collaboration with the suppliers. So these were all the sub functions or sub activities or subcategories in identify core security function. Then next is the protect. So in identity and access management, there are sub activities like you have to audit the identities and their credentials, and then you have to ensure that the physical access is protected, and also the remote access is also protected. And then you have to grant access on the principle of least privilege or the separation of duties. Then you have to ensure the integrity of your network by introducing segregation or separation between different networks. Then you have to bind the identities to credentials, and also have to ensure that these identities or credentials are asserted while a person or a process is granted access to information systems or information. Then you have to introduce the authentication measures as per the risk or the criticality or sensitivity of that asset. For example, you can introduce multi-factor authentication for critical systems, and for remaining systems, you can rely on single factor authentication. Then, in awareness and training, all the users should be informed and trained for secure cybersecurity practices. It may also include the privileged users. They should understand their role in cybersecurity, and any third party or suppliers or your partner or also your customers or the senior executives also, and the persons who are responsible for physical security, and especially the persons which are responsible for cybersecurity in your organization. So you have to train and aware all these persons. Then in data security, you have to ensure the data security at rest and in transit, and you have to ensure the data security or asset security during the entire life cycle, starting from its creation or operations until its destruction or disposal. Then you have to see the capacity of your information systems to ensure the availability of services, and then you also have to protect the data of your organization against any leakage, maybe by introducing the data leakage prevention or protection technologies. Then you have to ensure the integrity of your information firmware or software, and you have to keep the development or test environment separate from the production network. And lastly, in data security, you have to ensure the hardware integrity check. Then in information protection processes and procedures, there are 12 subcategories or sub activities. So you have to define the baselines for your system and network configurations on the principle of least functionality. That is, you have to harden everything else. And then you have to ensure the security in system development lifecycle, and you have to see the configuration change controls, and then you have to ensure that backups are taken and maintained and tested. And then the physical operational security is implemented, and also it is in accordance with the regulations which are applicable to these physical operations. Then you have to define and ensure and implement the data destruction policy, and then you have to continuously improve your protection processes, and then you have to share the effectiveness of the technology and controls you have implemented to protect the information. And then you have to prepare incident response plans, disaster recovery plans, or business continuity plans, and then you have to test these plans as well. Then you have to ensure that cybersecurity practices are introduced in human resource management. That is, for example, during the process of screening of individuals, or maybe disproving their access to the systems once they are being fired. And lastly, in this information protection, you have to prepare vulnerability plans and implement these plans to address the vulnerabilities which are affecting your information systems. Then next main category is maintain, and in these subcategories are You have to maintain the uh, repair log of your information systems, and these repairs should be conducting using the approved and controlled tools by your organization. And moreover, you have also have to ensure the cybersecurity practices in remote maintenance or repair of information system. And then in protection technologies, you have to uh, implement and ensure the log policy, and then you also have to implement the policies for removable devices, and everything in protection technologies should implement the principle of least privilege, that is minimum required access to system or processes or individuals. Then you have to see the security for communication and control networks, and then you have to implement the protection technologies to ensure the operational resilience in case of any disaster or in case of any incident. Then in detection, uh, in anomaly and events detection, you have to detect or maintain the network baselines, and after defining these network baselines and logging these network baseline, then you can detect any uh, activities which are detected which are not as per these baselines, and then you can perform the analysis of these events. Then you can also centrally collect these events and correlate for any to confirm any incident. And then you have to perform the impact of these incidents, and you also have to define the threshold for various incident alerts. Then in security continuous monitoring, there are 8 subcategories or processes. So you have to perform the security monitoring of your networks or your personals, and you also have to monitor the execution of any malicious code, or you also have to see for unauthorized mobile code. And then you also have to monitor the security of your external service provider, and also any unauthorized person, hardware or software which is going to operate into your environment, and any unauthorized connections. Then you have to continuously perform vulnerability scans for your network or systems. Then in detection main category, in you have to define the detection roles and responsibilities and to ensure the accountability of individuals. And then you also have to see all the applicable detection requirements, and these detection processes should be tested, and any event which is detected should be communicated to all stakeholders. And then you have to continuously improve the detection capabilities of your security or information systems. Then in next core function, that is response, the first category is response planning. So there is only one subcategory or function, that is response plan is executed during or after an incident. So you have to carry out response planning, and then you have to ensure that this plan is communicated to all stakeholders and they understand their responsibility in execution of this response plan, and then this response plan should be executed in a timely manner. Then in communication related to incident response, the persons should understand their roles and order of operations as per incident response plan. Then incident response reporting should be done as per the laid down criteria, and information should be shared with all stakeholders as per incident response plan, and coordination should be also done as per incident response plan. Then any external people should be shared, or the information should be communicated to external stakeholders, or maybe they can assist you, and it can help you to develop the context of overall incident. So if there is any activity going on or any threat, APT group is active globally, then it will give you a context of that incident in your organization. Then analysis phase, you have to investigate the security notifications, and you have to perform the impact analysis, you have to carry out the forensics, and then you have to categorize the incident as per incident response plan, so that a prioritized action can be done by incident response persons. Moreover, if any external or internal security teams are communicating you with the vulnerabilities or related to your system, then you have to perform the analysis of these vulnerabilities. Then in mitigation, you have to contain any incident from happening or affecting further systems, and then you have to mitigate that incident. And you also have to mitigate the vulnerabilities to your IT assets, or if this vulnerability cannot be mitigated, then you have to document the acceptance of this risk by your organization. And in improvement, you have to incorporate the lessons you have learned during your incident response process into your incident response. So you have to improve your incident response plan as per the lesson learned. And then you have to update the incident response strategy to better uh, prevent or respond to similar incident if they happen in future. Then lastly, the core function recover. In recovery planning main category, the subcategories or activities include that the recovery plan is executed during or after incident. So similar to incident response plan, the recovery planning should be done, and it should be communicated, and everyone should know his role in recovery planning. And then as soon as the incident occurs, the recovery plan should be active. And in improvement, all the lessons which are learned earlier should be incorporated into the recovery plan, and recovery strategies should be updated. Then in communication related to recovery, uh, the communication with the public should be done by the expert people who knows how to handle such events, or how to handle the public. And then the reputation which is lost due to the incident should also be part of your recovery plan. And then you have to communicate the recovery efforts to all stakeholders, maybe the public or external stakeholders, suppliers, or your customer, or your internal team, and also the senior executives. So this was very important video which I wanted to make since long. Thank you.